one of the common misconceptions about the Chicago Bulls are A, they have no draft assets, B, they have no flexibility cap-wise. And I'm going to talk about today and kind of explain why the Chicago Bulls have actually set themselves up to be pretty flexible in the future. And if this young core does kind of make a big step up next season, they actually earn a pretty good spot to be able to add to that young core and make a move if they need be. I'm going to explain it all and more, plus dive into the mailbag right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Terry Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. So I want to talk about the Bulls' current situation. Actually, with the Chicago Bulls going and kind of rebuilding the roster, going younger is the phrase that I kind of feel more comfortable using. They've actually set themselves up to either have some flexibility if these young guys drastically step up like they're hoping they're going to, and the Bulls are closer to 38, 39 wins, something like that. They're actually in a pretty good spot to be able to add to that team on the fly and to attempt another quick turnaround. Now, that's not something that I think the Bulls should do. I've said it before. I don't think a quick turnaround should be the thing to aim for the Bulls. They should build something kind of more sustainable over time with the young players and developing. But even with that said, they are in a pretty solid place, regardless of what they're going to do with that, both with draft assets and with the salary cap. And here's what I'm going to say about this. Yes, this year the Chicago Bulls have roughly about $4.5 million under the luxury tax, I think, left on that. They do have a part of their mid-level exception left that they can use if they want to, acquire a player. That leaves them some space, buyout candidates, things like that, absorbing a little bit more salary. They have that. I've explained that before. The Bulls also, outside of one draft pick owed to the San Antonio Spurs, own all their first-round picks other than that into the future. So one, whether it's this upcoming year, whether it's next year, whatever that pick ends up conveying to the San Antonio Spurs, they own all their picks outright. One of the things I've always said about the Chicago Bulls is that I wish that they monitor their cap flexibility kind of more like what Ryan Poles does with the Chicago Bears, right? He always maintains a little bit of space there, but you can tell how he's looking at the future and maintaining cap flexibility going towards the future. And the Bulls are on the precipice of doing that. Now, it could be another tight, period for the Bulls financially if they have all these young players that just exceed and qualify for maxes or whatever it is. But let's take a look at this, right? So the Chicago Bulls have one major free agent decision next offseason. And that's basically Josh Giddey and his restricted free agency in which he can qualify for, I think it's about like $28 million is his potential max there. I could be wrong with the number. Somebody will fact check me on that one. But you have that. Other than that, you have Chris Duarte as a restricted free agent, Torrey Craig as an unrestricted free agent, and Lonzo Ball coming off the books, right? So the Bulls right now, going into next offseason, have over $50 million beneath the luxury tax. Now, we know that that's basically the hard cap for the Chicago Bulls. They have $56 million beneath that first tax apron. The Bulls aren't going to go over that. If the Bulls were to re-sign Josh Giddey, which it probably is, that's going to make it closer to about $30 million in cap space that the Bulls have to maintain some flexibility. That's without a bunch of players coming off the books. Yeah, you have Chris Duarte here if he shows you something cool. You may have your own draft pick. We'll see. If not, you do have some second-round picks now after the DeMar DeRozan trade. But, okay, you have to fledge out the rest of your roster if you're still at this point. Let's say that the Bulls are at the point going into next offseason where the young players didn't step up, right, in the way that they hoped. The Bulls still were closer to that 30-win projection, which puts them right at the lottery. If they keep their top 10 pick, that adds a little bit more to that or not, but whatever, right? The Bulls then aren't really necessarily looking to make a big splash move in free agency. They could kind of preserve cap space by giving 1 or 1+1 deals to some free agents, to veterans to kind of support, but have another year of, all right, let's develop these young guys. Now we do own our own first-round pick outright. I know that's not the best thing for Bulls fans if this Bulls team, is going to like two back-to-back 30-win seasons, but again, that maintains the flexibility. The Bulls also, when you look at it, could even create more cap space, and that's where things get a little bit special for the Bulls at. When you look at Vooch's contract, which is a $21 million expiring contract next offseason, the Bulls could look to flip that, whether they have to Hopefully they don't have to include any assets, but they could look to flip that to maintain more cap space. Or, again, if this Bulls team shows this season that they are closer to that 28-30 win team, then you keep Vooch for another year. You let his contract naturally expire because then you're going to get more cap space at the end of that. Also, the Zach LaVine aspect of this, right? If the Bulls are able to move off Zach LaVine's contract and not take back all the salary that stays on the books as long, if you can get 1 to 2 expiring contracts that expire at the end of this upcoming season, that gives you even more flexibility. That $56 million in cap space could easily turn to $70, $80 million in cap space. Again, that's pre-Josh Giddey signing their new contract there to maintain even more cap space there. And I think that the Bulls, again, what they do with it is different. They create in the opportunity, and that's sometimes what you have to do as a front office. You have to create the opportunity so that you can be a player and have some lateral movement. They're not lateral, have some range in there in what you can do with your contracts. This past offseason, the Bulls were basically locked in with what they had to do just by the nature of how little space they had underneath that luxury tax. If you go back, I kind of predicted what the Bulls were going to, outside of the Alex Caruso trade, right? I kind of predicted who the Bulls were going to bring back, how DeMar DeRozan was going to have to go, because it just is what it was, right? Like, the money just is what it is. And so, that's one thing that the Bulls do have. That $45 million of the Zach LaVine contract, how much you take back in a potential trade for that really does shape that up. And then when you look at it going forward, right, the Bulls have even more flexibility going forward. I talked about next offseason, they have $56 million in cap space. The offseason after that, they have $121 million in cap space. Now, you got to take out the Josh Giddey contract in that next offseason. After that, you got to start looking at Kobe White. You got to start looking at Dalen Terry, Ayo Dosunmu as players that could be coming up for contract extensions at that point, or will be up for contracts extensions at that point. But even then, you still maintain some movement and some flexibility there. So I get it, Bulls fans. Where we are right now is not great. And I'm not trying to paint it as if we're all of a sudden in this much better place. I'm just saying that we have flexibility, right? And I'm saying that when you look at it, that I think for so long we've been trained to look at this Bulls team as automatically we think they don't have any draft capital. They have no cap space. And both those things are changing here sooner rather than later for the Chicago Bulls. And I think that's what, when the front office was looking at the timing of, all right, we have to kind of start making a decision. Are we going to keep trying to keep this thing going forward with the core that we had? Or are we going to start trying to go younger to take advantage of the potential flexibility that we have? Most of the draft picks that we traded out, it sucks. And I'm not here to I've said it. I had a video on it just recently, giving up the 2 first-round picks for the Nikola Vucevic trade, because I'm still not worried about Wendell, was one of the things that completely shot this Bulls team in the foot. Giving up another first-round pick for DeMar DeRozan could potentially shoot the Bulls in the foot, even with going younger now, depending on how this shapes out. But brighter days are coming for this Bulls team. Now, with that said, the opportunities that you have are only as good as your front office is to take advantage of those opportunities, which raises a new set of questions from Bulls fans that don't have the faith in AK and Eversley to actually make the right moves at the right time. And that, I ain't got no data to tell you that that's going to change, right? I'm not even going to try to sell you on all of a sudden them making better decisions more consistently. It has to come down to, what do they show us? Do they show us that they can make better decisions more consistently? And that, my friends, is just something that we don't have data on. Or even if we did have data on, prior success does not mean future success. Past mistakes don't mean future mistakes either necessarily, but it does cause that concern. And so, yeah, they've created some opportunity here, and I got to give them credit for that. Just when you kind of sit back and look at it objectively, like, take away everything that they did not do, because we could have way more assets right now if this Bulls team decided to move quicker on going younger. I'm not saying that they did not, but taking that away, because the woulda, coulda, shoulda is past. That time is gone. You're not getting that time back unless somebody has a time machine invented. If you do, holla at me. I got some decisions I'd rather I go back and change. But with that said, outside of that being a possibility, all you can do is create the opportunity. So when you step back and kind of remove away, and again, it's hard as fans do. It's hard for me to do, right? I go off all the time. But if you are able to step back and remove yourself from the potential deals that they missed and look at the flexibility that they could have going forward, they've actually kind of pivoted at the right time. Because had they locked themselves in to a long-term DeMar DeRozan extension rather than a Patrick Williams extension, which would have been much more, our cap flexibility would have been even less. And that's why the team had to make the moves that they did. If you locked in DeMar and doubled down on this core once again, you would have had basically no flexibility going forward in upcoming years. You would have been stuck with an even further aging core and no real upside because your picks, right? So that's another thing when it comes down to it. So, like I said, the Bulls seem like they're trying to make the best out of a situation that was their own creation. Let's see if they can do it. Again, not saying that we should just assume they're going to do it, but let's see what they can do. Let me know what you guys think down below. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the voicemails for today. This one's from Larry.
What up, man? This is Larry calling in. So two things. The first, from last season, I'm sure you've seen and watched more games than I was able to, but with the cutting, with the Bulls not cutting, the players not cutting, do you think that was because, Billy Donovan not calling them out for not doing that? Do you think that was because, one, they were in practice, they were not good at it, other than Devontae and just a few other ones? They just weren't good at cutting and moving around DeMar without being a problem. If that's why it wasn't emphasized, even though that was, that's an easier way to score when you don't have the talent. And do you expect to see more of that now when you have less of that to deal with trying to work around the mid-range player? If you expect to see more of that. The other thing was with Kobe White. Do you expect him to be the second option or the first option now as he's moving more back to the shooting guard spot? Or do you expect that to still be Zach LaVine as he's a superior scorer? Which one do you see being the way that they start off with the dual option of trying to develop versus trying to rebuild Zach's trade value? All right, appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, so as far as not moving without the ball, right? And I say that I personally blame that a lot on coaching. Yes, the players have part of the blame because they're out there on the court. They can move. But I always go back to, I always kind of look at some of the good things that coaches do, right? Tom Thibodeau, in his very first practice here with the Chicago Bulls, go back and look at it. He stopped practice when Luol Deng was taking long twos, and he literally only had to do one step back to take a three, which was almost the same efficient shot. And that next season was one of Luol Deng's best seasons, right? That is what coaching does. I know for a lot of people, they look at it and say, well, the coaches aren't telling them to go out and do this. Yeah, you're right, but it's the culture that you build. You have to make it uncomfortable. That's something I've always said with this Billy Donovan team and not moving without the ball. It should be such an imperative thing that you should move without the ball, that it should be grilled in your head in practice to where if you're not moving without the ball, you remember coach yelling at you or you're about to sit your ass down. So I think that that's a big important part of this, is that if that's the environment that you want to breed, it is up to a coach. Coaches just aren't out there to draw plays and everything else between the lines is just the players do whatever they want to do. I think some people overlook the importance of coaching, and coaching is important. So yes, I do put a lot of the blame on the Bulls not being a team that consistently moves without the ball on this coaching staff. And let's hope that can change. Now, as far as Kobe White, will he be the first or second option? I mean, I think it's going to be more of a 1A, 1B situation, maybe situational. I mean, Billy Donovan, AK have both talked about how they don't want whatever changes they made this offseason, or even when they said the same thing when Zach was potentially coming back. They don't want it to change Kobe White's role. Now it's time to put up or shut up. Let's see what it's going to be. I think that Kobe is going to get his line shares of the shots. And I think, Zach LaVine is going to get some too, because they do have to rebuild that trade value. But I think when you look at the first option, think kind of the first option, not scoring-wise, but to make decisions offensively, is going to be Josh Giddey in that playing the true point guard role. And let's see and it's going to be up to him to get the ball in the right player's hands at the right time. And I think that's going to be a thing. But as far as the options that they draw up, I think it's going to be a 1A, 1B thing between Kobe and Zach LaVine as far as scoring. Could be wrong on that, but let's see. All right, let's get into the next one. This one's for Mike.
Hey, Hayes, it's Mike. First-time caller. I appreciate everything you do. You've raised a lot of interesting points. And I wanted to ask you about this young core. So let's just assume that the Bulls keep this young core. What kind of defensive schemes do you think would work best for them? And what kind of defensive schemes do you think Wes Unseld might be using. I ask because with Giddey this year, it might make sense. He can just guard a 3 on the defensive end. You have LaVine guard the 2 and Kobe or Io on the 1. But going forward, if you've got Modest Bucelis at the 3, someone like Kobe at the 2 and Giddey at the 1, I just don't know how that would work defensively. Again, not about this season, but just moving forward. Yeah, I appreciate hearing your thoughts.
Now, Mike, as far as defensive schemes, Josh Giddey's not going to guard the 3. Look at Josh Giddey. I get it. People look at Josh Giddey's size, and they think 3, they think whatever. Josh Giddey's terrible guarding the 3. And people will look at it and say, well, the 3s aren't necessarily as fast. This is the 2024. This isn't the late 90s, early 90s. 3s are, in a lot of cases, almost just as fast, and the combination of speed and strength makes him even more dangerous for steps than point guards. I think Josh Giddey's length can be guarded. He's gotten better at guarding point guards, but Josh Giddey really doesn't guard 3s. He hasn't. So no, I don't think that Billy Donovan's going to try to cook up a heavy crossing scheme now, unless Josh Giddey is switched on the 3s through being forced to switch. Josh Giddey isn't going to guard 3s. They're not going to have Giddey guard 3s on defense. They're going to have Giddey guard 1s. He's going to have to learn to use his length because it's barbecue chicken either way, right? So, especially when you look at the fact that a lot of 3s now are like former 2s or would have been 2s, I just don't think that moving Josh Giddey to guard the 3s is going to get you that much difference. He's going to need to guard point guards. And so as far as the defensive scheme that the Bulls run, I think it's going to be, hopefully we're not switching as much as what we did last year, unless the other teams are forcing switches, because we just don't have switch in that starting lineup. We just don't have those type of players that are really good at switching. Vooch, not good at switching. Now, if we switch that to Jalen Green, maybe being the starting Jalen Green, Jalen Smith being the starting center, maybe you can run away with switching a little bit more there. But like when you say Giddey guarding 3s, do you see Giddey guarding Jason Tatum? Do you see him guarding even a DeMar DeRozan, right? Who even is older, but is still pretty quick. You see him guarding players like Miles Bridges, Scotty Barnes, Jimmy Butler, right? I don't see that. Keldon Johnson, Keegan Murray plays some 3s, right? I just don't necessarily see that. So I think he's going to guard the point guard. I think that Zach LaVine can be fine when he's locked in. Defensively, he's just off ball. He needs to not fall asleep. And I think we're going to have a pretty straightforward defensive scheme. Now, I do think that if Jalen Green's in there with his ability to protect the rim a little bit more than Vooch, even though he's not a great on-ball defender, we can run kind of more of a defensive scheme where we're trying to funnel things into the interior. But again, that's situational. So we'll see what Billy Donovan cooks up. And I don't know, you said Wes Unseld Jr. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be the defensive coordinator type role like a Tom Thibodeau was under Doc Rivers, but we'll see. We'll see. Great voicemail there. Thanks for that voicemail. Let's go ahead and get into the next one. This one's from Reginald.
Hey, this is Reginald from Columbus, Georgia. The talked about which teams are most likely to play for guys like Zach LaVine and Vooch. I think it's all going to be West Coast. The trade that I most likely think is going to happen with Vooch is probably Golden State trading Andrew Wiggins for Vooch, and maybe you can throw in Javon Carlos and Andrew Wiggins to make the money work. Hopefully the Bulls can get at least a second round out of them for various Andrew Wiggins. But the team that I'm thinking about the trade for exactly is probably the Lakers. But instead of a 2-team deal, it'll probably be a 3-team deal. I'm thinking Portland's probably going to get involved, or hopefully get involved. You have to get back their first round pick, which will give them control over all their current picks. Because I think it's locked up because of that conditional pick that the Bulls got. But outside of that, I think Bulls get that. Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams III, and from the Lakers, the Bulls get their 2029 first round pick and Jared Vanderbilt. The Lakers get back Russell and Roy Hachimura, while the Lakers keep Austin Reeves and get back LaVine. And essentially, that's what the team or the Bulls are going to look like. But that's just my idea of what the Bulls might look like, if they make those moves. But part of me does think that Zach LaVine might be here to the end of the year, not because we couldn't find a team for him, but because the Bulls couldn't find a deal that to their benefit. And once again, I think Zach might not complain too much if he knows that Billy Donovan might be gone by the end of the year as well. So once again, that always leaves that door open where there's like a player with the top that says that that might change if Billy's gone. But for the most part, I'm not really worried too much about trades. I'm more worried about effort, what they're going to give, because that what matters more to me. Effort. Doing fantasy trade deals, that's fine. So during the season, but at this point, you have to make the season start. What you improve. Thanks.
Now, Reggie, I have a couple of problems with your wording there. When you say that you think that these trades are most likely, unfortunately, I don't think we can say realistically what trades are most likely for any Bulls player right now because they're trying to rebuild their value, and we don't even really know if the Bulls are ready to sell that off. Like, I don't think that. I think that you're looking at some trades that have been rumored, especially when you talk about most likely being Vooch going to Golden State. Shout out to my boy Jamal over at Bull Central who mentioned that. And I think there was another writer as well who mentioned that as well. I can't remember off the top. It may have been Zach Buckley. It may have been Buckley that mentioned that trade, but I won't say that trade because it's rumored is most likely. I don't think we have most likely trades right now for either one of those guys because the value has been so low for them. So while you presented solid trades in the mindset of the Bulls, I don't know if those trades are actually ones that go down. They're fair, I think, overall, from my perspective, for all parties involved. But again, we don't know the value. And if Zach LaVine comes out and doesn't look good, right? If Nikola Vucevic comes out and loses the starting center position to Jalen Smith and we look better with Jalen Smith as center, I just don't think that value is going to be there. And again, I think it also ultimately comes down as well to how this Bulls team looks with the young players. How much do they step up? So we'll see what happens. We'll have to see how the NBA evaluates those guys. Like I said, you didn't present bad deals at all. I just think that we can't say anything is most likely right now because of just the up and down nature. We'll see. All right, let's get into the last voicemail. This one's from Shay.
What's up, Hayes? I just watched your video and you asked, is the top 10 pick more important? Is the playoffs more important than the top 10 pick? I'm here to tell you, man, yes, it is. I know I'm a little bit of a historian bringing up random facts, but hey, you got to think about it for a second. Did Derrick Rose get better by waiting on, I think it was Kevin Durant, by working with a top 10 pick like Kevin Durant a year after he was drafted? Or did he get better by experiencing the playoffs his first 2 seasons, which turned him into an MVP by his 3rd season? Did LeBron James get better by waiting on a pick, or did he get better by winning and experiencing the playoff wins? You know what I'm saying? People got to realize winning cures a lot of things, and it establishes a mindset on a team, not necessarily picks. And honestly, let's be real. If we really cared so much about picks, you know what we would have did? We would have traded Alex Caruso to the Sacramento Kings when they offered us the 14th overall pick in this year or next year's draft. So the way I see it, I don't think the Chicago Bulls really even care about picks like Cooper Flags or not. Now, they would appreciate if they could get them, but for the most part, the end goal is establishing a culture. And you establish a culture by doing what? Winning. Now, if you want to do some trust the process shit, hey, go all for it. You get a group full of young guys, and then you continue on losing. But you ask, hey, does making the playoffs matter more than picks? And I'm here to tell you, man, yes, it does. And it's not just because of how I think or my opinion, but history has a tendency to repeat itself. And history tells me that when you win a lot, you establish a mindset. How you think Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum got to be better like they are? And it wasn't by getting no high draft picks. It was by winning. But hey, that's just my opinion. Anyway, tell me what you think. Peace.
Now, Shay, your voicemail is a futility in listening to the finer details. And Shay's my boy, so I'm going to talk a little bit more shit to Shay than I would if anybody else left this voicemail. First of all, I said play in, not play off. That is what I asked. If you're going to ask the question, Shay, make sure you listen or answer the question. Make sure you fully listen to the question that I presented. Did not say playoffs at all. I even specifically said in that video that if you feel you can go on an actual playoff run, that is more valuable. But the play-in is not valuable to me more than a top 10 pick because all of our young core has already been in the play-in. Kobe, Ayo, Pat, Dalen, they've all been in the play-in. And then when you look at new players to our additions to our young core, Josh Giddey has gone on deep playoff runs. Jalen Smith has been on teams on deep playoff runs. Yeah, Miles Bucelis is different. So he is a straight-out rookie, so that's a different case. So I said play-in, not playoffs. And I tell you what, If you fall into the playoffs and you end up winning one game, we saw it. How much did our young players look better after the series against the Milwaukee Bucks? But I still do think that that type of experience, if you're making a run to the actual playoffs, yes, the experience that you get there is great. I said play in. The play in. How much are you really gaining? What is more valuable? A play in, which you may not make it out of, right? Especially if you're sneaking in as the 10th seed on a 35-win record, or a top 10 pick. Answer the actual question, my little brother Shay. This is my little brother. I'm throwing, like I said, I'm definitely going to throw him more shit than I would general people. So I'm not coming at just any random listener. Shay's my little brother. Listen, my boy, listen. I love you, Shay. I'm glad that we're starting to get voicemails from you again. Make sure you guys are following the show, man. At Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.